Well, this is our last day of the Justice Summit 5, and we're so happy that all of you are here this morning. We have a treat for you. We have the Sheriff of Sarasota County, Tom Knight, and I'd like to just introduce him for just a moment, and then he's got a surprise for us that he's going to talk about, and I think that you will find this very compelling and give us all hope about the future. So Sheriff Knight is the 10th Sheriff of Sarasota County. He's currently, I switched sheriffs between Seminole and Sarasota there, sorry about that. He's in his second term. He first took office in January 2009. He's had a 20-year career in the Florida Highway Patrol. He's lived in Florida since 1973 when his family moved to Sarasota from western Pennsylvania. So the weather's a little bit nicer down here, isn't it?
Quite a bit, yes.
Yeah. And he graduated from Venice High School. He attended Manatee Junior College. He transferred to Florida State University, where he earned a bachelor's degree in criminology in 1986. And then he got his graduate certificate in public management from the University of South Florida in 2012. He serves on the advisory board of the Florida State University College of Criminology and Criminal Justice, who Smart Justice works very well with. And he also was just named one of their distinguished alumnus. And finally, he serves on the State of Florida Commission for Law Enforcement Accreditation. So it's my pleasure. And by the way, I called him on Friday and asked him if he would do this speech this morning. And I want to tell you that he enthusiastically said yes. He didn't wait a moment. He said, I believe in smart justice, but I would love to do it. And then I asked, can I ask one more favor? Would you mind sending us your color guard? And so if you remember on Monday morning, he sent his color guard to present the colors for us. So Sheriff Knight, thank you so much, and welcome to Sarasota.
Thank you, Barney. Is it okay if I stay here? Oh, yeah. I just want to say thank you and welcome to our beautiful county, and hopefully that you come back and visit us when you're not working. So hope you had a nice time. I guess the weather's been great, so the Hyatt's a great place to be, and hope you got a chance to go downtown and see this special county. But this is my home, and it is an honor to be the sheriff of a community grew up in. One thing, I'll just start out a little bit, and I just shoot from the hip a lot, and we'll talk about a program we're doing in our jail. And I've been doing law enforcement now for nearly 29 years, and I started back during the crack cocaine area with a lot of violence and stuff, and I know a lot of my peers, the sheriffs, saw it too. But one thing that we recognized when I took over the sheriff's office, my staff and I, was that we're not going to be able to arrest our way out of social issues and addiction and some of our crimes that we were seeing. And a lot of our crimes, as you probably well know being here, were committed purely for the fact of fueling addictions and our opiates and alcoholism and all the things that you talk about at these conferences. And so we were looking at, one, how do we control our crime, which we've done very well at. We have a great crime rate reduction through our environmental changes, not trying to arrest our way out of it. But more importantly is the people that are going into our jail, which we have nearly 1,000 people in the jail at any given time, is, what are we offering them in the jail? Because once they go out, they go right back and do the same thing again. So it was something that we dialogued a lot about as a staff. In 2009, I was approached by a group here in Sarasota County called SURE, which probably many of you know who SURE is. It's Sarasota United for Responsibility and Equality is the name of it here. It's a faith-based program, has a Salvation Army and many other programs, faith-based programs inside of it. And a lot of it was kind of intriguing because the things that they approached me with was why you keep arresting people for their addiction. And my answer was, well, they keep committing crimes. We're trying to work this out. Can we work together? And what can we do? And so they come to us with a program about addiction recovery. And in June of 2009, we opened here in Sarasota County what we now call, and we called then, was our addiction recovery pod. At that time, around the state and the nation, we had heavy opiate problems, and I think heroin is still an issue statewide. But Sarasota County was ground zero. We had the highest per capita death rate for overdose deaths for opiates and the oxycodones. And so while we were working on that, we were working on what can we do with the people coming into the jail that are being arrested who are addicted to the opiates. And this was our answer, or our opportunity. We didn't really know, but we certainly weren't going to say no to an opportunity to see if a program would work. So I'm going to kind of just read through it a little bit. What we did, we threw some things together. It was created in 2009 in a single direct supervision cell block that housed 48 male inmates. In October 2009, the services were expanded in order to include a females in a cell block that was housed 28 female inmates. Earlier this year, we relocated our females recovery pod to our north wing of our jail, and we now house 48 female inmates inside that addiction recovery pod. The program is voluntary. We don't want people in the program who don't want to be there. We don't want them to be there just for court resolution or to have the state attorney not prosecute them. We want them to want to have help, and they all volunteer to go into this program and support each other. It's strictly voluntary, and the inmates must follow the rules of the facility along with the rules of the recovery pod. Attend and actively participate in all the programs and meetings. Remember, they're all together. They're supporting each other. Be ready and seated in the room 5 minutes before they started their programs. Bring all required books to class. Raise your hand. Stand when you speak. No profanity. So it's a pretty strict program, but it's a great program. This provides a layer of behavioral modification to us inside the jail. Our current programs in this addiction recovery pod are Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Healthy Boundaries, re-entry programs to help them get back out when they get released from the facility, to help them into some type of a transition, victim impact, mediation, anger management, parenting, GED, and of course our religious-based recovery. Since the inception in 2009, we have had over 2,500 inmates go through the recovery pod. Year to date right now, we've had over 225 people volunteer to go into the recovery pod, and we have over 248 females go into the recovery pod. So we're very happy with where we're at. This is all like-minded people, and I believe, seen here amongst you today, this is part of what our new Smart Justice philosophy is moving towards. One thing I will say, in Major Bell, I call him the warden, our jail commander, he always uses the analogy that as the saying goes, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And I can assure you, in our jail operations, we're always modifying what we're doing, and we're looking for better results. But more importantly, we're looking to see what we can do to keep people from coming in, making sure those who need to be prosecuted, those violent offenders and everything are being prosecuted and held accountable, but also those people who are creating crimes because they have an addiction or some mental health issues are given the help that they need to be given here. I want to be quick. I got a whole bunch of other things that they've put together for me, but I think the most important thing is a testimony. And we have a young man here today, and I will say this to you, is getting off my script here. There's nothing more rewarding. I was telling Sheriff Enslinger, at this point in my life, in my career, 29 years, arresting people is not a thrill anymore. Helping people is more of a thrill than arresting people. And I think that's what we're starting to see throughout the state. And I can assure you, from the sheriffs, we're starting to see that we want to help people. We serve more than we protect now, and we want to serve everybody and help people. And we have the means to do that. I have a lot of friends, like many of you, have had problems, and they call me up in a panic because they can't find their children, their adult children. And I always said the best protection for them is for us to arrest them, and the best intervention for their addiction is coming into the jail, because we have programs for them now to keep them safe, to make sure they're not in the street, and to get them hopefully pointed the right direction. And so today with me is David Pruitt, and David I was talking to David a little bit earlier, he's a very tall young man. He's 34 years old. David's been in Sarasota County his whole life, and we had a lot of interaction with David over the years, and I think he'll say that. But I'm so proud of him, and when we go annually to our addiction recovery pod breakfasts with these individuals who are in there, there's nothing more rewarding to be in there eating with the people that you intervened with out there with your deputies or the police officers who bring them into us, but for them to shake your hands while you're eating breakfast, invite you to their weddings, introduce you to their girlfriends or boyfriends, and to say thank you very much for what you did inside your jail facility, because if I didn't have that help, I'd still be doing the same thing I was always doing. And so we thought at the sheriff's office here that it's more important than me to tell you what we're doing is to give you a testimonial of somebody who's been affected by it. And I'm going to introduce you to David right now.
How's it going? My name is David Pruitt, and I'm a former member of the Sarasota County Jail Men's Recovery Pod. Today, I'm proud to say that I have over 2 years of sobriety, and as a direct result, it's a direct result of going through that pod. Growing up, I grew up in an alcoholic family where there was some physical and verbal abuse, and outside of the family, there was some sexual abuse. And in trying to mask those feelings and find comfort, I sought comfort through drugs. And, I hung out with people that I felt accepted by, and it took me down a path of addiction. And what started out for me as like a social lubricant and trying to find myself, quickly turned into physical addiction. And, during the course of that, I committed some crimes, and I was incarcerated repeatedly. And, I never had a solution on trying to better my life. And partying to me wasn't the problem. It was certain types of drugs that I wanted to eliminate from my life. And I got out of jail repeatedly with the same plan. I'm not going to stop partying altogether because that's where I was comfortable doing. But I wanted to stop, using opiates. Opiates was my drug of choice. And, a miracle happened for me in 2013. I was incarcerated again for I don't know how many time. And I had the opportunity to go into Men's Recovery Pod. And, I went in there. It wasn't the worst run that I had been on, but spiritually and mentally I was broken, and I was at a place where I wanted change. And I think that's the reason that the Recovery Pod works so well, is because it's a voluntary thing. It's not something that you're forcing on me. It's the power of my decision of wanting to change. So when I went in there was a group of men that I became comfortable with, to be honest, about, certain self-esteem issues and how I felt. And, they bring Alcoholics Anonymous and also Narcotics Anonymous come in there, and they are former addicts and alcoholics that have been through the same things that I had been through, and I could relate to them. Instead of comparing my story to them, I related to them, and I could understand the feelings that were involved. And they also have other members of the community that come in and teach success principles and physiology of the addicted mind to show us why we feel the way that we feel. And it became a place of progress for me, and I wrapped my mind around the idea that I can recover and I can get better, and I found that I feel so much better without anything in my body and doing good things for other people. What the Sarasota County Jail Recovery Pod gave me was a set of tools that I'm able to use when the going gets tough. I can push through it and make progress and continue to do the right thing. I don't have to go back to finding comfort in drugs or alcohol. So that's how it worked in my life. Thank you.
Well done. Good stuff.
I'll just follow it up with some of the other things we're doing in the jail in the future, is that we are going to even continue to more formalize this program that we have inside the jail. Hearing him is better than anything I could say out here to the group. He knows it better than I do. It's just an honor to be able to create a pod so that these people can get healthy, and to be able to go in there and talk to them, have them shake your hand and say, thank you, I needed some help. Most of the people that we discovered, as you well know while you're here, is that they don't have anybody to lead them through the path. They don't have anybody to help them with the system, like we help our children. And they've been in a point where they just need a little guidance, and you see people like a smart young man who just needed an opportunity to say, you know what, I got this skill set now, and I can go out and do this, and then they can come back and see us too. We want to stay in touch with them and see how their outcomes are, and it's fun to be invited to their weddings and things like that. That's the cool part of doing these jobs. But we're looking in the future to formalize it with the things that we've already done, but also to teach financial literacy, job readiness, behavior modifications, and self-actualization. And that we believe is that, the jail is there to keep people and keep our community safe, but it's also the opportunity so we can help people go back out into the community. And one little anecdotal information that I'm going to get your way is I was in 3 years ago with a couple of my commanders at a Wendy's or something similar to Wendy's, and the person in the back came out and said, I want to shake your hand, thank you, because I was in your addiction recovery pod, and this is the first job I've had in 3 years. And, that's huge, that somebody's working and back up and on his feet and pushing his life forward. So that is more important at this point in my life and my career than anything else. So that's helping people is the most important thing. So, but I want to thank y'all. I think everybody, I know Sheriff Fenslinger, all the sheriffs that run jails have their own opportunities and their own ways of doing things. But I'm hoping that, you know, in the future is that we see more social service programs inside our facilities and less lockdown of people who are just being housed there just to resolve a court resolution. And but Barney, I didn't even ask you. Do we take questions or we just get up?
Yes,
and
sir.
walk away?
Would y'all be willing to take some questions, David?
David,
or Sheriff?
sure. If you're all right with it, sure.
Any
I
questions
would.
for David? I've got one, David. Tell us a little bit. How many times had you been arrested, and what did you start in the beginning? Did you start with opiates, or did you start with another drug? Did you go through a progression of them? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
For myself, it was a progression of things. It started out with marijuana, and it continued to progress, you know, LSD, ecstasy, and then eventually I found opiates. And once I had moved to opiates, there was no moving into anything else. That's exactly what it was. And as far as the crime goes, I'd be lying to you if I told you I know how many times that I've been arrested. It's a lot. And, you know, in sobriety, I don't wake up in the morning time and say, you know what, I think I'm going to go break into somebody's stuff. You know what I mean? I don't have that in me. But in addiction, I don't know, it kind of takes away my conscience. And as long as I can get high that next time, it kind of doesn't matter. So, you know, I'm not a bad person, but I made some extremely poor decisions in my past.
But the great news is that you recognize that and you've turned your life around. Tell us a little bit about your experience in the pod, in the addiction, working with the staff, the sheriff's staff at the jail. Can you tell us a little bit about what that was like?
Absolutely. And being incarcerated so many times, I kind of developed a me versus them attitude. And in entering the Sarasota County Jail, it was, when I went to the recovery pod, you know, it was weird to see officers that care. They care about us getting better. It's kind of like, you know, they're not just there turning a key. It was, you know, they cared about the progress that we were making, how much effort we were putting into the program, even taking time out of their day to sit down and talk to us about things we're going through, because, you know, certain people have deaths while they're in there, and the officers will actually take their time to sit down and talk to you about things that are going on, and it took away that me versus you feeling that I had with officers and myself. It's kind of like I view the officers that are in that pod and other officers in the community as friends. I don't have that anymore. And I think the reason that it works so well for me is because, you know, I was able to identify some core issues. You know, I could never be honest about, you know, being molested when I was younger. That was a major thing for me, and it was something that I always kept locked up. And while I was in the pod, I was able to identify some core issues and get honest. And then I come to find out that other people have suffered from the same thing. So I can relate to them, and we can bond about it. And it took the power out of the situation for me. It was almost as if it no longer hindered me in being honest about it. And I felt comfortable being honest with others and them not judging me, because we'd all come from the same thing.
I have a question.
One quick thing is about what you're asking is our deputies in our corrections facilities is, in the 7 years since I've been here, we've never forgotten about them. You know, we spend a lot of time on our patrol deputies, and you know, like he was saying, we take this attitude with them, and over the last 7 years is you're not just here to turn the key, you're here to change people's lives. So we make sure that when we do our training, our rightful policing, and how we operate inside that facility, is that they understand now, I think, and I believe, is that they're there to help people, not just to keep them locked down. So we can put 40 inmates inside a pod with one deputy, and typically when you look in there, you'll see them all just kind of hanging out together. It's a mutual respect. We have very limited altercations in the jail, if any, and so we've kind of built that culture into the deputies who work inside the facility.
You know, Sheriff, that's so interesting, because we heard yesterday from Warden Burl Kane at Angola Prison that he's got the same milieu. He's got staff and inmates working together, and they're not fearful of each other. So that's wonderful. Got a question here.
Before I heard you talking about yourself and your crimes, you were a crime victim. And I think what people forget, when you end up, like you're a victim of child abuse.
Yes, sir.
You're a victim, so am I. You're a victim of sexual abuse, so am I. I'm in recovery, you're in recovery. But I think what happens when people end up in the system, the previous history doesn't get counted. Not that it should ameliorate the crime, but yeah, I understand you as a crime victim more than a criminal. And I think that's, and you do too, and that's what's amazing, Sheriff, that just came from a conference on reentry about forgiveness. You know, Van Jones was talking there from CNN. And he said, when are we going to forgive the people who did things, you know, he's not Carlos Escobar, you know. He's a guy who had a shitty life and then ended up in jail and got his life back. So did I. So, and that's a different frame. And Sheriff, you're able to articulate that. And when you say that, it means more because you're a sheriff. So I really applaud both of you. But Sheriff, your compassion really comes across, and that's so important because everybody thinks of the criminal justice system as punitive, and especially now, as punitive and out of control, when in fact we need models like you standing up to show that there is a heart in the criminal justice system.
Got a question over here.
I will be in about 7 years.
First, I wanted to commend you for being up here. That takes a lot of personal feeling to be able to share your story, and I want to just thank you for that. You talked about being spiritually broken to bring you to that point where you really had to make that change in your life. What was going on in your life then to really bring you to that revelation that, hey, I really need to make a difference and change my life?
Just the fact that there had been so many failed attempts. You know, I grew up I knew who God was, I just didn't know God, nor did I choose to want to know him. And I felt like any type of spiritual life, I don't know any other word for it, was going to be lame. You know, that it was just, that I wasn't going to have fun, because that's what I was looking for, is fun. And I've come to find out that the more that I invest in my life spiritually as far as helping other people out, the better that I feel. You know, I mentioned something about having low self-esteem, and that's because I wasn't doing any esteemable acts. You know, going out and committing crimes and harm to others, that doesn't make me feel good inside. But I found, you know, through service to others, that I feel much better about myself, and that's something that works 100% of the time. I've been able to get involved with the Angel Tree at the Salvation Army and go around and pick up toys for less fortunate kids, and that makes me feel fantastic every time that I do it. And to be quite honest, at the time, really, a spiritual life is pretty much the only option that I had left. It's like I had exhausted every other resource of how I was going to try to do this. I tried to do it my way 150 times, and this was really the only option that I had left, and it was the best option.
And I have a question for you, Sheriff. This is so exciting to hear so much shifting in law enforcement and in crime prevention. And hearing you say about not trying to incarcerate our way out of this anymore, apparently we all now know that didn't work. And the recognition that so much crime does come from addiction, as high as 80%. And then when you go back even further, you find out most of those people come from very broken homes, and I also come from a family of addiction, which gives me a lot of my empathy in the fact that I advocate for addiction. And so I'm so glad to hear that now sheriffs who have been so pressured to say, we need to be tougher on crime so you get reelected, instead you come here and you say, you know, we really have to go back and look back to the beginning and see how we can help people overcome the brokenness that brought them to a place where they're criminologically involved with our systems. But my question to you is, I hear repeatedly, like in Angola, that when you do this and you create these sections and you have officers come in a position to get involved in the lives of these people and help them return to themselves, the person that they were created to be by God himself. And you see that miracle, that it changes the whole institution. And I heard you kind of hint to that. Do the officers ask to be a part of that section, or is it just everybody say, pick me this week, or rotate? Or what can you tell us about how it's changed the actual culture of your institution?
Now, that's a great question. But first, I would say this is that even though I've been doing this 29 years and my peers as sheriffs, we are tough on crime. But we also know the balance of helping people. And I think you're seeing that more and more in our criminal justice system amongst the sheriffs is that, we know how to handle crime, and we are the protectors of the communities. And that's my ultimate goal, is to keep the community safe and keep this community nice. But at the same time, we are also here to help people and who need our help. And some of them just need to be locked away. But somebody like David needs help. And so inside the facility, it's just been a cultural change. And what was really kind of neat about it is that, when I took over, they were looking for opportunities. They wanted to do more. It's a long 25-year career. And I heard a lot about, I need my opportunities. I'm stuck. I've been doing this 7 years. I'm tired of turning that key, and I can't get out on the road. And what are you going to do to get me out on the road or give me some help? And so we said, they choose this career for a reason. We don't want to put them on the street just to put them on the street and give them an opportunity. So we wanted to find opportunities for our corrections people inside the facility. And this is just one of many different programs we have inside the facility, but to change the culture of the thought process that you're just there to feed them, lock them down, and go home after 12 hours, is that we wanted to give them some training in some social skills. They're kind of a mentor. You heard David say that, is that they become mentors inside the jail facility. And we have to be careful. We have to keep that balance and know what their role is, so they don't cross that line. But again, it's just been healthy for us as an organization to have our, close to 200 corrections deputies at work, or 200 personnel inside that jail say, you know what, I have an opportunity. This is my career path. A deputy's chosen to go out and work the street, work his or her way up, but I have my career path here, and my career path is working inside a jail and helping inmates out for those people who select to go into programs. And that, they become a little bit of father figure, mother figure in some regards. Because like we were talking about earlier, some of these people have not had the very good lives growing up. They haven't had a mother figure or a father figure. And so these individuals that we train through our rightful policing training have taken on that role, and it's all good. We got to be careful so they don't cross that line, that they leave it inside the facility, but it's worked out very well.
Sheriff, just as a follow-up to that, when we had 3 sheriffs here yesterday, and of course the chairman of our board is a sheriff from Seminole County, but did you ever think when you got into this field 29 years ago that you were going to be doing some social work in addition to being doing law enforcement?
No, I think Sheriff Edslinger is sitting here. I was trained, that was crack cocaine era. And we were all fighting a lot of gun violence, and it was kind of, the training was survival of the fittest, and us against them, and we want our communities cleaned up, and we're going to do it with our law enforcement. And I think you see shifts all the time in law enforcement, and it's fun to be part of the shift. That's what drives us still to continue to do these jobs. And I think we're seeing a shift again, what's going on nationwide, not just our jail operations or smart justice, but also the way we police and the way we serve. And that's what drives us, just to keep doing these things, not to get elected. Getting elected is not the hardest part. It's the part you have to do to keep the job. But doing the job is more important than getting elected. And so it's kind of fun to go there and be part of an agency and have a team that's experienced to say, what does our community want from us? And they want service now. They don't want to be policed. They want to be served. And so we're going through that shift again.
Boy, what a great attitude. Thank you. David, I have another question for you. What's the future hold for you? Do you have a job now, or are you looking forward to getting a job? You going to go to college? What's on the horizon for you?
I think pretty much anything's possible at this point. Right now, I'm over at the Salvation Army. It was a decision that I made to go through there and try to, further better myself to be out in society. I'm over there. They have the Viper program over there. And to tell you the truth, I kind of went into the Viper program closed-minded. I've been through the 12-step process, and I go to meetings on a regular basis. Like, what else is there that they can teach me? But, in going in there, I've been able to identify some more core issues with myself, and I've also been able to be honest with others about that. And, they have social workers over there that I've been able to go in there and get some more insight as to why I feel the way that I feel. So that's been my process right now. I have a trade of frame construction, which I could either go back to, but in bettering my life, I find that God opens doors for me repeatedly. And, you know, there have been some people that have offered to give me a job where I won't have to be breaking my back for the rest of my life. Should I choose to do so, I've also researched some grants. If I want to go to school, maybe for personal training or something like that, the Salvation Army gives grants. So they have a grant that I could go to school provided I finish the schooling within a year. So there are a lot of opportunities. I haven't made a decision yet. I still have a little bit of time, but good things are coming in my future, and I feel that.
That's great. That's great. So one more question for each of you. David, somebody? Oh, okay, Linda's got a question.
I wanted to ask, oftentimes in community corrections, we see families come in, mothers and dads, sisters and brothers, children that are impacted by their family member being on probation or incarcerated. So I wanted to ask you, how has the impact been on your family with the change that you've made?
With the change that I've made, for myself, you know, my family always had hope that I was going to do better, and I would do somewhat better for a period of time, and then it was like, you know, I would get right back into what I was doing and snatch the rug out from underneath them. So, you know, they were kind of cautious in entering into this last time with me, and, you know, they wanted me to prove it. And that's part of the reason also that I went to the Salvation Army, because I verbally committed to go through there. And, you know, for myself, you know, they say the STEP process is a three-part process: recovering a relationship with God, yourself, and other human beings, and the other human beings being my family. The relationship with my mother and father, it's second to none right now. It's the best relationship that we've had over a period of years. You know, my father was an alcoholic and never took any credit for anything that happened to me when I was younger. And he and I have been able to talk extensively about that, and he apologized to me first time ever it happened in my life. And I no longer hold that resentment. It no longer hinders me. My relationship with my mother's always been good over the years. She's always been my rock. She's always had hope that I was going to do the right thing. So there was no strain in that relationship. I do know that she was cautious. You know, she kind of stayed guarded. But I think, you know, over these past 2 years that I've reinforced that, you know, I'm on the right path this time. My relationship with my brother has always been strained due to my own physical abuse and I guess trying to find myself. I was never very kind to him, and that kind of left our relationship rocky. And today he and I, you know, tell each other we love each other every day. I'm able to give him a hug, and it's a pretty awesome thing, man. So, you know, and my relationship, I have a little sister also, and her and I's relationship's always been awesome. You know, she's always had hope and faith that I was going to do the right thing and encourage me. And I cannot complain about my relationship with my family today.
David, there's another question. Another question from an audience member. Her voice is a little raspy, so she wanted me to ask it for her. Have you had an opportunity to reach out to other trauma victims in the work that you do with Salvation Army and other organizations? And what has that been like for you, if you've been able to do that?
Well, for myself, I noticed that, you know, in the recovery community, I don't want to sound egotistical, but I've noticed that I'm a leader in the community. People look up to me literally, you know. At 6'9", yeah, at 6'9", people look up to me. But I notice in entering into the Viper classes that the more honest that I am in group about how I felt, the more progress we're able to make, and other people are honest. And I don't know, man, it just becomes a place of progress. Same thing with the recovery pod, having trust in other people that I can bare my soul to you, and you're going to keep what I'm telling you in confidence, and we can share that. And so I've been involved in that. Part of my passion is, you know, the service side of this thing's really taken on a life for me. And part of my passion is there's a guy in Sarasota County that goes around to high schools and talks to kids. And for myself, I know how I felt when I was in high school. You know, I moved around to a lot of different groups. Like there was the skater group, and then there was the group that listened to the rap music, and then there was the sports group, and I was always trying to discover which group I fit in with, and I never really felt like I fit in with any particular group. And then I found the group that was skipping class and doing drugs, and it was like, I found myself, you know what I mean? I was accepted in that group. So, I continue to nurture that, and I feel like if I can go into a high school and talk to some kids about how I felt, how, my low self-esteem, I gravitated towards this group and be honest about things that happened in my childhood, maybe I can reach out and try to help another child. And that's part of my passion. And I've reached out to a couple of members in the community that are directly involved with that. And for me personally, I feel like God has put them in my path, because I went to an outside meeting and just so happened one guy was there and started telling me about him going around to Riverview and Sarasota High School and how soon he's going to try to get Booker High School on board with that. And he didn't even have to ask. I jumped at the opportunity to go in and do it. So that's part of my passion and me giving back to the community of Sarasota, because, in my crimes, like, I can't put a face to all my crimes, so I can't go knock on a door and say, I'm very sorry for what I've done. So in giving back to the community that I've taken from, I want to get involved in things like that. I want to get involved in Habitat for Humanity and start, giving back to the community. You know what I mean? The Recovery Pod's given me so much. It's time that I start giving back, man. Taking doesn't make me feel good.
Well, great. Well, listen, at 6'9", we could use you on the FSU basketball team. So don't let anybody talk you into going to Florida or to the Bulls. We need you in Tallahassee. Sheriff, let me ask you the last question, and that is, when you decided to go ahead, by the way, I don't know if I didn't hear you say it, but I know that you told me that your jail is the first certified addiction facility in the southeastern United States. Tell us a little bit about what was how difficult was it to jump over those thresholds to do that? Is this something that other sheriffs can do? And was it time consuming? How long did it take you? Was it expensive? And obviously it's worth it because you've got testimony from people like Tall David, but tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it costs us nothing because we have great nonprofits here in Sarasota County. But I would say, I can't speak for all our sheriffs run jails because they have different dynamics. They may not have the resources we have here in Sarasota County. And so it does make it difficult on us all to do different things. When we implemented it, certainly I'm elected. And, people worry about elections all the time. And I don't really worry about elections anymore. I always just took the stance that if my agency's doing its job and the public's satisfied and feels safe, is that, my election will take care of itself. I may be wrong. That may happen someday. I said, boy, I missed that one. But, it is what it is. But you got to be true to yourself. I had a sheriff tell me when I took office, be true to yourself and do what's right and let the chips fall. And I always remember that. And so I would just say, everybody's got to have a little courage when you take these jobs on. If you take them on to survive, you won't be successful. If you have the courage to do what's right, you'll probably work out. And so sometimes it just takes a little bit of courage to do what's right. And did I catch a few of people I worked with in law enforcement call me up and say, boy, we live in a conservative community here. This is more of an older population, a lot of retirees here. And so the old school thinking is lock them down and keep me safe. And so, of course, that came through my mind, but I never flinched with doing it. I did have some people call me privately and say, are you doing the right thing? But at the end of the day, I knew we were doing the right thing. I knew trying something was better than doing nothing. And that, you don't find out if you can pull it off until you try. You can always go back and stop it, but not doing it is not good. And I would tell you this with David he is one of many that you could get testimonials from that have gone through this program. And it is far from perfect. Not everybody's successful, but the ones we have reached, one is better than what we were getting in 2009. And so we feel a lot better where we're at, and we feel that we're growing into it. And a lot of the people who criticized me when we did it have now become proponents of it because they want to see a healthier community too. So I would just say for anybody who is fortunate enough to do what I do, and it's an honor to do it, is that we're never perfect. I'm not perfect. I've made my mistakes in my life, as David has, and I would say that everybody needs that opportunity for change. But when you do these jobs, is that sometimes you just got to have the courage to step up and do what's right, or maybe you shouldn't be doing a job. And so we'll leave it at that.
Okay. Well, how lucky and fortuitous that I would pick up the phone and call you on Friday and ask you to be here today, and that you of your own volition decided to invite Tall David. What a great way to end the last day of our summit, to see the real face of law enforcement, not what the networks want to show us, but what's really happening every day on the ground around this wonderful state. And so we're so appreciative of all of the sheriffs and you accepting Smart Justice, and Tall David for being a part of it as well and showing that there is hope for the future. Let's give them a round of applause.
Well done.